My name is Stephen Smith. For the last 8 years, I've been the victim of targeting, unwarranted surveillance, stalking, and exploitation by the U.S. government, military, and all levels of law enforcement, specifically the police and the Navy. Because people have a difficult time believing that law enforcement and the Navy would be corrupt enough to engage in something as despicable as human trafficking, I do not usually describe it as such. But technically, according to the legal definition, human trafficking is what I experienced. What I'm about to describe happened all over the country. It happened in red states, in blue states, in ultra-progressive areas, and in ultra-conservative areas. The individuals responsible for this exploited me for what I estimate to be billions of dollars. This all started because I have ADHD, because I'm a male, and because I am straight. In this video, I'm going to briefly tell you why and how they did this, and then I'm going to tell you the damages to my life which have resulted because of it. This started in LA while I was working for a very insular, very elitist school called the Episcopal School of Los Angeles. Some consider this to be a school. I, on the other hand, because of the actions they took against me, consider them to be a cult. I'm not going to mention names in this video, but it is important to note that members of the cult were very well connected throughout the entertainment and technology industries. The cult members were motivated to do this to me because they were jealous of me, disagreed with the validity of ADHD as a real condition and the use of medication to treat it, wanted intellectual property, which I was working on at the time, and if they were truly Machiavellian in their original motivation, which I believe they were, then they were probably also planning on using the consequence of what they did to me as future leverage for extortion against the individuals who participated in it. I like to call this creating blackmail fodder, or enticing someone to do something illegal and recording their participation in it for the sole purpose of blackmailing them in the future. Nevertheless, their jealousy of me and their desire for the things that I was in the process of making, had made, or would make in the future is what motivated them to begin the process of trafficking me. To do this, they first weaponized the justice system against me by defaming me to the police in LA. They reported to the police that I was a pedophile, a drug addict, a drug dealer, and potentially someone who should be flagged as a domestic terrorist and/or a school shooter. They made these same claims to my doctors, family, and friends. All of these claims were and remain completely and totally false. Once they had sufficiently defamed me and started the process of eroding my support network, the surveillance began. In addition to the police and federal law enforcement, one specific cult member, Will Pearson, who had military connections, used those connections to include the military, specifically the Navy, in the surveillance. After which I was placed in what is known by the military and law enforcement as a surveillance box. In this video, I will not go into the specifics of how the box was created, except to say that the boxed individual is listened to, watched, and monitored 24 hours a day. Malware is installed on the individual's devices. Their communications are intercepted. Their data is stolen. When they are outside, they are watched with a drone. And while they're inside, the victim can be monitored in a variety of ways depending on the access the owner of the living space granted the person doing the surveillance. Once I was placed in the box, all of my online accounts were hacked. All of my data, including my medical records, were stolen. All of my communications were intercepted. I was locked in a poison domain name server, and I was watched and listened to continuously. The surveillance was live streamed on Facebook, and all of the data and intellectual property was posted. The surveillance could be accessed via pay-per-view, and the intellectual property and the data could be and was bought. As a result of the connections of the individuals who started this, the surveillance and the data were viewed by all sorts of people with the power to exploit it on a mass scale. I'll list some of the specific things it was used for in a different video. For now, I'll say that it formed the basis for movies, specifically those made by Marvel and Disney, TV shows like Saturday Night Live, applications, branding, and new features on popular social media and streaming media platforms. That is to say, I was, for all intents and purposes, exploited by the entire media industry. Since the surveillance and my location were public knowledge, the box could also be used for things like community-based targeted harassment, gaslighting, and virtual reality. I have, for instance, been harassed by vigilante Narcotics Anonymous members who work with the police and who are against the use of ADHD medication almost every time I've gone outside for 5 years. Their unlawful access to me was also used to sexually abuse me. The harassment and abuse happened across settings. It took place at work. It was conducted by my roommates in multiple living situations. And it became so severe and intense and long-lasting and frequent that it caused massive damages to almost every facet of my life. These include the complete downfall of my career on 2 separate occasions, millions of dollars in real damages, billions in exploitative losses, wrongful detainment, severe medical malpractice, including sexual abuse by a team of doctors, early retirement due to permanent psychological injury, a complete loss of all family and friends, homelessness, forcible displacement from 4 different cities in 3 different states. And after being forced to retire, I am now living in my car. It has been at least 6 months since I last slept in a bed. After exploiting me for billions, I've been left with nothing, not even credit, from all that they took from me. Obviously, I asked for help from a number of different sources. Law enforcement, even when presented with hard evidence that this was and is happening, has refused to help due to the fact that they were participating in it. Because my domain name server was poisoned, many of the lawyers I reached out to for help were fake Google search results generated by AI who didn't really exist, as were the government web pages and forums I completed in an attempt to report what I was being subjected to. These included the FBI webpage, the Department of Justice webpage, and the civil rights complaint portals associated with the EEOC and the DFEH websites. Because my communications were being intercepted, any communication attempts I made to real lawyers were blocked, redirected, or responded to by fraudulent actors pretending to be employees of the firms I contacted. The same is true of the attempts I made to contact news organizations. Thus, making this video was my final option to bring attention to my situation before I was forced to seek asylum in another country for the sole purpose of receiving the same basic rights which the vast majority of individuals on this planet are allotted and which all of us should expect. In my quest to bring this horrific experience to an end, I have been threatened thousands of times coercively to remain silent. Doing so only resulted in further exploitation of me and more hardship to my life, with absolutely no benefit at all. Point being is that I did not want to do this. The point is not to promote discord or make a political statement. It was literally my only option to end the daily abuse I've suffered for years, get back what was stolen from me, and receive justice for the damages it caused me.